Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. It's official. In a joint session of Congress yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris had to preside over the certification of her failed presidential bid by declaring Donald Trump the 47th president of the United States. Now it's on to the inauguration. In a parting shot as he leaves the White House, Joe Biden yesterday signed an executive order to ban all offshore drilling, which would hamper President Trump's plan to open up production of oil to bring prices down. We have the details for you. Trump has once again floated the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state following the surprise resignation of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Is this another example of the Trump effect, with Trudeau stepping aside? And Representative William Timmons joins us for a Tuesday with Timmons to talk about the certification of the election and where the U.S. House is headed next.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
In her official capacity as Vice President, Kamala Harris declared Donald Trump as the victor yesterday.
Members of Congress, the certificates having been read, the tellers will ascertain and deliver the result to the President of the Senate. The state of the vote for the President of the United States, as delivered to the President of the Senate, is as follows. The whole number of the electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, the majority is 270. The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected, President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
Next up, of course, the inauguration on January the 20th, and it cannot get here too soon. That had to be pretty tough yesterday, and certainly not what Kamala Harris had planned to be doing on January the 6th. It's bad enough to have been beaten so badly, to have squandered $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion, but to then have to read the vote and declare Trump the winner. Yesterday was a bad day for Kamala Harris. I can't say that I'm really felt sorry for her necessarily. Maybe I did a little bit. Maybe I did feel a little sorry for her. But I can promise you, she would be gloating if she had won and it was the other way around. The Veep's electoral vote total was the smallest attained by any Democrat since Michael Dukakis, who could only get 111 votes in his 1988 defeat by George W. Bush. The joint session was pretty much drama-free, lasted about 30 minutes. All 434 House members were present, all but one of the 100 senators in attendance, and evidently that was Senator Mitch McConnell, who was nowhere to be seen. As you know, he broke with Trump after Trump refused to accept Joe Biden's victory in 2020. He was nowhere to be found yesterday. He's been in bad health too, though. So maybe that was it. Even Representative Nancy Pelosi, who's still recovering from a broken hip and was using a walker to get around, was present to watch her successor as House Speaker Mike Johnson preside alongside Harris. Johnson sat there smiling the whole time. And at the point where she had to certify the votes for vice president, of course, she called those out too. And J.D. Vance was sitting on the front row and got a round of applause. He was the most popular man in the chamber yesterday, as a lot of the people in the 119th Congress were trying to get a selfie with J.D. Vance, soon to be the vice president. On the same day that the U.S. Congress certified the reelection of Donald Trump to another term in the White House as number 47, New York Judge Juan Merkin denied Trump's request to delay sentencing in his New York City versus Trump trial. In his decision, Merkin wrote, "Defendant's motion for a stay of these proceedings, including the sentencing hearing scheduled for January the 10th, is hereby denied." Juan Merkin is going to sentence Donald Trump, or going to find him guilty. That's his main point. That's his primary point, is to dispose of the case with a guilty verdict, even though there's not going to be a sentence. He's already said there's not going to be a penalty involved. He just wants to make sure that the case goes on record so that he can declare Donald Trump convicted. Early yesterday, Trump's legal team filed a motion to delay sentencing in the case. He's set to be sentenced the 10th at 9:30 a.m., just 10 days ahead of his inauguration as the 47th president of the United States. Merkin has already said that he will not sentence the president to prison and instead issue a sentence of an unconditional discharge, which means there'd be no punishment imposed. So why do it? Because he can, I guess. Trump, of course, found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in this Manhattan case back in May. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office worked to prove that Trump falsified business records, according to them, to conceal a $130,000 payment to former porn star Stormy Daniels. This was ahead of the 2016 election. This was to keep her quiet, the hush money. Wow. They can't stand themselves. They can't help themselves because they can't stand Donald Trump. President Joe Biden's not leaving without a fight. Trump has said that he would immediately reverse a executive order that Biden signed yesterday, which would ban all offshore drilling along most of the U.S. coastline. Trump vowed to immediately reverse this, but the reality is, according to some legal scholars, he may face some roadblocks because of a 70-year irrevocable law. Throughout the 2024 presidential campaign, we heard President Trump vow that if elected, he would expand oil and gas drilling in an effort to bolster American-made energy. However, yesterday, Joe Biden issued this 11th hour executive order to forestall any actions exactly 2 weeks ahead of Trump's inauguration. This is a permanent stop to most new oil and gas drilling across U.S. coastal and offshore waters in an area that spans 625 million acres. Trump said in response, "It's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately." What's he doing? Well, he's trying to stop Trump before Trump even gets started. The executive order issued under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act seeks to block future oil and natural gas leasing along the east and west coast. Trump said that he has the right to reverse such an action. But given that Biden issued the order under a 1953 law that allows the president to enact bans on oil and gas development, he would not be able to simply reverse it, according to legal scholars. Because in 2019, during Trump's first term, a federal judge ruled that the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act does not permit presidents to overturn bans established by previous administrations. This means Trump would need congressional approval to reverse Biden's decision. I don't quite get that. I don't know why there would be any executive order that could not be overturned by another executive order. But folks smarter than I say that this may be tough and that the Biden administration knows that. That's why they've done this. Biden said that his decision stemmed from his efforts to curb climate change, one of dozens of moves from the Democrat president's green energy agenda. He said, my decision reflects what coastal communities, businesses, and beachgoers have known for a long time, that drilling off these coasts could cause irreversible damage to places we hold dear and is unnecessary to meet our nation's energy needs. Wow. Biden went on to say it's not worth the risk as the climate crisis continues to threaten communities across the country and that we are transitioning to a clean energy economy. Look, Joe Biden, all of that stuff, all the electric vehicle stuff, it's out the window in just a couple of weeks. So Americans are going to need that oil because we're going to be driving our gasoline guzzling vehicles in spite of you. So who's making these decisions? Do you think Joe Biden thought of that himself? Martin Gurry wrote a great column speculating on how the Biden administration has been working over the past few years. It was published in the New York Post yesterday. I'll share that with you in just a few minutes. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Somebody needs to just go ahead and take Joe Biden to his beach home and save him some embarrassment, save the country some embarrassment. Another day, another gaffe. Yesterday, President Joe Biden had the internet buzzing again. This time it happened during a White House event marking the signing of the Social Security Fairness Act. Biden tried to sing Happy Birthday to 17-year-old Eliseo Jimenez. But what followed was just another moment that raises serious questions about his ability to perform the very basic functions of his office and of life in general, day-to-day life. Here's what happened. Jimenez, who walked all the way from Lubbock, Texas to Washington, D.C. to raise awareness about Social Security, this young man, nice-looking young man, he was smiling the whole time, was on stage standing beside Joe Biden. Biden had his arm around his shoulder. As the president started the birthday song, he appeared to forget young Eliseo's name, or how to say it, I don't know, and ended up just mumbling through the lyrics. The audience went along with it, but the clip shows Jimenez laughing awkwardly as if trying to play it off as a joke.
Gotta sing Happy Birthday. You ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right.
That's the President of the United States. Let's just hope nothing happens in the next 2 weeks. The internet, being the internet, the reaction was pretty swift. Comedian and podcaster Tim Young summed it up perfectly by saying, Biden brought a guy on stage to sing Happy Birthday. The problem is he either doesn't know his name or forgot it and mumbled nonsense instead. Only 15 more days of this. Kyle Lamb, a former DeSantis staffer, joked that Biden's performance felt like when you're in the car confidently singing along to a song, but you don't actually know the lyrics. And then there's Drew Holden, who nailed the big picture. He said, the most powerful man in the world's brain doesn't work. Those who wish us ill aren't unaware. And again, hopefully, in just a few more weeks. Joe Biden will be resting comfortably on the beach. This isn't the first time that Joe Biden has botched a birthday celebration. Remember back in January 2023 at the National Action Network's Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday breakfast? He stumbled over the name of Andrea Waters King, the wife of Martin Luther King III. At the time, he awkwardly sang "Happy Birthday, Dear Valen," and then quickly tried to move on. You know, it's not just about forgetting a name. We all forget names. This is an everyday occurrence. This is the leader of the free world repeatedly showing signs of cognitive decline, and people are still just ignoring it. The world is watching, folks. Our enemies, whether it's China, Russia, or Iran, they're perfectly capable of a last-minute attack. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's pray it doesn't happen. Critics on social media hit the nail on the head when they ask why the mainstream media isn't treating this as the biggest story in the country. Think about it. If this were any other president, there'd be round-the-clock coverage. But with Biden, it's downplayed. It's brushed off as Joe being Joe. Don't worry about it. That's just Joe Biden. He's like that. Biden's defenders say something like, well, it's just a harmless mistake. But how many harmless mistakes can the American people tolerate from the president? Whether it's mishandling a speech, forgetting a name, or struggling to finish a sentence, these gaffes signal much larger issues that they just want to ignore. This latest incident, yes, it's probably small, but it's just part of the pattern that nobody wants to admit. As Biden's presidency winds down, the question about his fitness for office won't just go away, I don't think. It's going to be part of his legacy. And here's the bottom line. The American people deserve better. Don't pretend that we're just idiots and we don't recognize this. On the text line, Jennifer says it's worth talking about. I'm just curious about this. Do you have any comment on South Carolina House of Representatives Ralph Norman and Nancy Mace and their roles in the Mike Johnson Speaker of the House vote? Pretty interesting. I thought, well, you know, it was some drama there for a few minutes. It all worked out. Mike Johnson's the Speaker. Let's move on, I guess. Faye writes, this is what I sent to Mike Gallagher. I watch you on the Salem News Channel. During breaks, clips of the cities across the country are shown, and we really have the most beautiful countryside. Just wish the location names could be shown so that we know what we're looking at. Hey, good idea, Faye. I'll pass this on. Faye's talking about during some breaks on the video side of the Mike Gallagher show, they drop in some beautiful landscapes, just scenery from around the world. Sherry in Georgia says, hey, Joey, Happy New Year. I think Trump needs to have the CIA search the White House for bugs, listening devices, and then have dogs come and check for them or an independent company check for them. I would not put it past the Biden administration because Biden is not in charge and hasn't been in charge for the last 4 years to do something underhanded like bugging the White House. What do you think? Thank you. Keep up the good work. Look, I wouldn't put it past them either. I suspect there's probably going to be some type of sweep. I would suspect. One other thing before we move off of Joe Biden, I forgot to bring this up. Did you read the story about Biden transferring 11 Yemeni detainees from Guantanamo Bay? He's sending them to Oman as part of an ongoing effort to what he says is to reduce the population at the U.S. military base because he ultimately wants to close it. The detainees have been held for over 20 years without charges on trials. They were involved in the September 11th terror attacks. They were transferred in a secret operation early morning, and it comes at a time when Guantanamo Bay is being scrutinized. But it's just a little suspicious. And again, they did it in early morning hours. They kind of was sneaking around doing it. These are some bad guys. Can we trust Oman to keep them? Or will they just turn them loose back into the world population? Yes. There's probably going to be a lot more people sent to Guantanamo Bay. I've never agreed with closing the place down anyway. We need it for the bad guys. Adding to the controversy, this news breaks just days before Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, is expected to plead guilty to avoid a death penalty. Supposedly, this transfer has been in the works for about 3 years. Prior plans in October 2023 met opposition from congressional lawmakers. Critics argue this decision reflects poorly on the administration's priorities, particularly as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to take office with a pledge to keep Guantanamo Bay open. Just another example of Joe Biden trying to do what he can to make life harder for Donald Trump. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. Martin Gurry wrote a great column yesterday in the New York Post titled, "Why We Must Expose the Criminal Fraud of Those Behind Biden's Disastrous Presidency." We've talked a lot on this show about the fact that Joe Biden has been in la-la land for most of his presidency. And we have speculated on who has been pulling the strings behind him. Is it Jill Biden or who? I don't typically read entire articles, but I want to read most of this because it's well written, number one, but it raises some questions. He starts with this. "Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away." It's written by Hughes Mearns. Gurry writes, "January 20th will see the conclusion of the most extraordinary episode in the history of the American presidency. For the last 4 years, the supposed president, Joe Biden, has been the man who wasn't there. Bloody and historic events, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Hamas's pogrom in Israel, and the subsequent five-cornered Israel-Iran war have shaken the world, yet Biden wasn't there. Millions of non-Americans of every description, including terrorists, criminals, and members of the Cuban Communist Party, have swarmed over the Mexican border and flooded into our urban centers, costing billions of taxpayers' dollars to support, and still, Joe Biden wasn't there. And speaking of money, trillions were spent by a ramshackle administration that built nothing and achieved nothing, but did manage to trigger an inflationary spike, making food, cars, and housing less affordable to ordinary Americans, though Biden wasn't there for this either. The President of the United States is supposed to preside. I mean, it's in the title. Biden didn't because he couldn't. From the start of this term, we're now told old age had grievously enfeebled his body and dimmed his mind, and the latter, let's recall, never burned with particular brilliance to begin with. The controllers who managed Biden worked hard to keep him away from his job. He spent 40% of his time in office on vacation, much of it slurping ice cream on the boardwalk at Rehoboth Beach. Great gig if you can get it, he writes. Gurry goes on to say, but even when Biden was in Washington, he had bad days, quote, during which he wasn't allowed to play act being president. Only 7 cabinet meetings were held during his term. That's 1.75 meetings per year, in case you're counting. Did these people know each other's names? One can imagine that, rather than the coordination of policy, meetings were taken up with trying to figure out who the chirpy gay guy was, sitting 2 chairs away from you at the big table. This was a cabinet that wasn't there. The predictable consequence was an absolute policy vacuum. The U.S. government ran on slogans. Arsenal of democracy meant Ukraine. Immediate ceasefire meant Israel. Equity meant racialism and racism. And once the slogans were uttered, we were stuck with them forever. It's been impossible for a brain-dead government to learn from failure, for example, in our dealings with Russia and the Middle East. Even when Biden was having one of his presumed good days and he was allowed out in public, he was liable to blurt out weird and shocking statements. He said that regime change in Russia was a necessity. He said that the U.S. would go to war with China if it invaded Taiwan. He said many things that contradicted past American positions that had never been part of his administration's baggage. Statements that had to be walked back, denied, and spun by horrified White House staff. When Biden said of his Republican opponent, Donald Trump, "The only garbage I see out there are his supporters," staffers waved their arms and jumped up and down, exclaiming, "No, no, you're missing an apostrophe," which apparently made all the difference. Guri writes, how does this happen? And who are these people? Who gets to tell the president that he's a dotty idiot? And he said another no-no, and it's back in the box with him. Who is actually there when Biden isn't? It's a good question, isn't it? He writes, is it his wife, the splendid Dr. Jill? His sister, Valerie Biden Owens, described by Wikipedia as an American political strategist? Or his White House chief of staff, Jeff Zients? While whole regions of the globe bleed and burn, who makes these awful decisions on behalf of the wealthiest and most powerful country of all? Is it National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, or maybe the ineffable Antony Blinken? For most of Biden's tenure, staffers were represented as mere underlings cleaning up behind rare slip-ups by the boss. After his cognitive incapacity was painfully demonstrated in the debate with Trump, and especially after he dropped out of the presidential race, the story changed. Family and staff, the new line went, had overprotected the president. Out of affection and loyalty, they had covered up Biden's now universally acknowledged decline. This profoundly misrepresents the situation that has prevailed for the past 4 years, Guri wrote. Whoever has been making decisions on Biden's behalf criminally usurped presidential power. That's a good point. In 2020, American voters didn't elect Jill or Valerie Biden, Sullivan or Blinken. They elected Joe Biden and invested him with the tremendous powers of the presidency. If, in the way of all flesh, Biden had become too incapacitated to perform his duties, he could have resigned or been removed by invoking the 25th Amendment. The coterie around Biden knew exactly what was happening. It wasn't subtle. Joe Biden is like dead, not literally. He can't say a sentence, observed Henry Apple, a national security staffer. Those closest to the president must have seen him at his worst. Yet they chose to perpetrate a fraud in which Biden was turned into a scripted sock puppet, and they got the thrill of running the world. Blind ambition is a banal phrase, but the kind of blindness whose consequences involved in this scandal would make Lady Macbeth blush. The entire federal government, all that time, was flying blind like an aircraft eternally circling on automatic pilot. Guri writes, I have, as you can tell, too many questions, but I will limit myself to two big ones. The first one, what actual persons in the administration, names and addresses please, made the calls in the persistent trampling on our citizen rights? Someone ordered for Catholic groups and the anti-transgender parents to be treated as terrorists by the FBI and Homeland Security. Someone erected and allocated funds for a tentacular online censorship structure that silenced or downranked opinions distasteful to those in power. Someone debanked or cast out of the financial system persons lawfully working on artificial intelligence and crypto. Someone perverted the prosecutorial authority to hound and persecute political opponents, particularly of the Trumpist variety. We know Joe Biden didn't commit any of these unconstitutional acts. He was too far gone. So who did it? And what should be their penalty? Guri writes, my second question is, where the heck was the news media while this clown show was going on? That's another valid question. He writes, everyone with eyes to see could tell that Biden had slipped to a far place from which there was no returning. Most of us have had a parent or grandparent who arrive at that sad hour. Suddenly, the parent is the child and the child becomes the parent. The condition was already visible from the beginning, from before the beginning, or else why did Biden conduct the 2020 campaign from the comfy couch in the basement of his Delaware home? Sideline here. I've always said that had it not been for COVID and Biden had been allowed to stay in his Delaware basement, he would have never been elected, because the American people would have seen how bad Joe Biden was even then. But because of COVID and because it legitimately allowed him to stay out of the spotlight, it was perfect for the Biden campaign, because he could sit there, he can control his environment. The American people never got to see him in a debate situation out on the campaign trail. They had no idea just how bad he was even then. Back to the New York Post article. He writes, the media is supposed to speak truth to power. It's supposed to have many sources, deep connections. Journalism's noble purpose, we're told, is to inform the public to make better citizens out of the ignorant masses. None of that, of course, was ever true, but it now stands exposed as a laughable falsehood. Reporters have special passes to the White House. They accompany Biden on his trips, often on Air Force One. They saw that the president couldn't say sentences, and they chose to think nothing of it, to say nothing, to remain at best incurious, and at worst to lie, and so to curry favor with the mighty. The news media's corruption is too evident to need elaboration, but there ought to be consequences. Here's a modest proposal, he writes. Curry says, disband the White House press corps. Cast them out like the money changers from the temple. Select those American citizens entitled to question the president by lot, the way the Athenians chose their public officials. Frustratingly, what we have come to call, for convenience sake, the Biden administration has decided to go out in style. Hundreds of pardons and commutations have been awarded just because they could. Hunter Biden is now immune from prosecution for every crime, high or low, he committed between 2014 and 2024. What crimes are we talking about? Maybe Jill Biden knows. Foul murderers sitting on death row have been preserved from execution and will live on the taxpayers' largesse until the end of their days. Why was this done? Maybe someone in the White House can explain. Medals were also dispensed like candy to political allies. Liz Cheney, of all people, got one. Cheney lost her last primary by a margin of 30%. Her vast unpopularity, I suppose, made her a hero to the establishment. On Monday, Biden permanently banned offshore drilling, one of the realms of allegedly irreversible regulations that have been issued. On December the 3rd, Biden surpassed his former boss, Barack Obama, for regulatory obesity, adding to the Federal Register in a single year 96,088 pages of government regulation. Who directed this pointless last-minute frenzy? 1 nanosecond after Trump enters the White House, those irrevocable mandates, even if carved in stone, will be wiped away with a single stroke of the pen. The process of discovery will begin in a few days after the president, who was never there, is finally gone away. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Joining us today from the nation's capital, representing the 4th Congressional District, Representative William Timmons. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Joey, doing great. Happy New Year. Really, this is a momentous time in our country's history. We are truly about to save the country. I couldn't be more excited about my work this year in this Congress.
Yep. You guys made it official yesterday in a joint session of Congress, the results of the November 5th election certified. Now it's just a matter of the January 20th inauguration. Your thoughts on yesterday's certification?
I mean, I can't imagine there's more difficult things to do in life than what Kamala Harris did yesterday. I mean, she had to certify that the person that beat her.
Yes.
It was a lot. But, she kept a steel face and, we got it done.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was good. It's as things should be. And I'm just excited about the next few months. We have so much to do. The American people gave Donald Trump a mandate, and we're going to deliver that mandate this Congress.
Yep. One of the things I noticed, Congressman, Republican members were talking about the future, the great opportunity our country has to move forward. Yet some of the Democrat members yesterday still talking about 4 years ago. I'm going to give you an example. Your colleague from Texas, Representative Lloyd Doggett posted on X. 4 years ago today, Trump incited a deadly insurrection after he lost a free and fair election. Today, only snow is on the Capitol steps, not an angry mob bashing their way in to desecrate and injure. Some of the Democrats still just don't quite get it, do they? I mean, did Representative Doggett not hear what the people on November the 5th said about Donald Trump?
You know, I think there's always going to be some naysayers, but I just don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. And I think that the reason that we're going into unified government is because people were annoyed at the manner in which the Democrats changed the rules of the election 4 years ago. They were annoyed at the way that Joe Biden said he was going to be a unifying president, and then was one of the most progressive, extreme presidents in the history of our country. So, I mean, the people aren't buying it. And if the Democrats want to keep pounding this drum that they know better than everybody, that they think that there's 47 genders and, all this nonsense, woke ridiculousness. I mean, I know where that's going to take them, but I'm willing to let them see where it takes them.
Yeah.
It'll be more time in the minority, and I like that.
Yep. On our guest line today, Congressman William Timmons. After Speaker Johnson was elected to a full term on Friday, he talked over the weekend about possibly a single large bill that will address many of President Trump's policy initiatives. What can you tell us about what that may look like?
So as of now, we're going to use reconciliation, and the plan is, and it's adorable. They're going to pass it on my birthday on April 30th.
Oh, wow.
This year. So it's going to include everything. It's going to include historic tax cuts. We're going to extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We're going to legislatively secure the border. President Trump is going to secure the border with his executive order shortly. But we're going to have to also pass laws for that. We're going to open up our energy. We're going to really reduce the bureaucratic red tape. We're going to reduce the amount of federal overreach. This one bill is going to happen in the next 3.5 months, and it's going to change this country for generations. So we got a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do.
Yep.
But we got to get it done. The future of our country depends on it.
Yep. Congressman, when you talk about reconciliation to pass the legislation, what exactly does that mean in layman's terms?
So the simplest way of looking at it is any bill that is attempted to be signed into law that's proposed requires a majority vote in the House of Representatives, and then it requires a 60-vote margin in the Senate. So we currently have 53 senators in the Senate. So we don't have the ability to pass traditional laws and have them signed in by President Trump. So what we can do, we can use a procedural nuance, which is called budget reconciliation. So we have to pass a budget, and then there's a way that you can avoid the 60-vote threshold in the Senate, and you only need 50 votes. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to take advantage of. There is a very complicated rule surrounding what is and is not eligible for that process. So it's not easy. It's not like you can do anything. There's a 6-part test. I can promise you could read on it for hours and still not understand it. So we're not going to explain it on this radio show. But it is very nuanced. It requires that you are not changing federal law. It is that you are addressing spending and taxation. There's 6 different steps to it, but it's complicated. But we're going to use it to the best of our ability to achieve maximum impact. And then we're going to work with the 7 Democrats we need in the Senate to pass other legislation.
Yep. Congressman William Timmons is with me. And Congressman, I'm just going to take you at your word that that's the best route for us to take to get this passed. So, there are 2 big issues that were on the voters' minds going into November the 5th, the economy and the border. Can you talk with us briefly about each of those specifically? For example, what can you guys do that can get the cost of living down and pretty quickly?
So the biggest thing is not spending more money we don't have. We're also talking about changing the tax code. Well, let me back up. So the reason that the cost of living is so high is because of the Democrats spending $7 trillion. $7 trillion.
Yep.
So that caused inflation to rise, it caused interest rates to rise, and it caused the cost of living to rise. So that's what we're dealing with. So the number one thing we need to do is to stop spending money that we don't have. So we're going to stop doing that, number one. We all know about the Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, we're going to cut spending by hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. So that's going to also cause inflation to go down because government spending will go down. After that, the energy policies that we're going to put into place are going to cause an explosion in U.S. energy dominance. And so that's going to facilitate additional investment in the economy, and it's just going to it's going to be so great.
Yep.
So, that's just the beginning, though. And you look at the border. President Trump is going to sign executive orders on January 20th in the afternoon that are just going to solve so much of these problems. We have to pass some laws for some parts of it, but a large percentage of it can be done by executive order. So we're going to be doing that immediately. And it's not just there. It's a whole of government effort. So it's going to be incredible.
Yep. Well, these are exciting times for sure. Congressman William Timmons, is always a pleasure. I appreciate your time. And look, I will plan to see you at the inauguration. How's that?
I can't wait, Joey. Look forward to seeing you there. Big things ahead. Everybody buckle up. The opportunities this year and the next 4 years are truly endless. I couldn't be more excited, and we're gonna turn this country around.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.